You see the title of the video. Oh, you see the title. A yuji itadori cosplayer giving belt to ass to a child predator at a anime convention, and yet you think that's a bridge too far because you don't like how your version of being a vigilante works. Because you think that the Yuji Itadori cosplayer would rather sit behind a camera and yap all day and do some research, decoys, make alt accounts, like Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory with the big glasses and the big brain. Now, it's sad, really. Imagine wasting your daily life on someone's live stream, right? Instead of going out of your way to being the heroes of the internet, right? As y'all claim to be. But yet a Yuji Itadori cosplayer gives a shit about the people. Why? Because he would rather not sit behind a camera. He would rather go out of his way to give belt to ass to a rapist. But you don't like it because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. So he got arrested for assault and public nuisance, while the child predator gets to walk away scot-free. Mind you, that's a law in Singapore, by the way. I bet you didn't know that. See, we need people like that in our country. People who actually give a damn about getting their hands dirty and beating the ever-living shit out of these pedophiles than rather people that will rather make decoys and make alt accounts and all this other shit. Why? Because that's their version of vigilantism. That Yuji Itadori cosplayer literally shut the mouths of 80% of predator catchers in this country. And it's from Thailand, Singapore. And that's why we're here. Because we have more guns than rather that. Y'all just giving me confidence to continue talking about politics on my stream. That's just it. Because what you're proving is that you have nothing better to do than to blame on someone else for your own shitty life. Oh, it's blame the brown people, blame the autistic people, blame the transgender athletes, blame the gay people, right? I love my neighbors as myself. I treat Renee good as if she was my daughter that I never had. I treat Alex Preddy as if he was my father that I never had. Did you say anything on your live streams about that? No, because you don't care. Schadenfreude. You care only about the delight of hurting other people. See, when I see a predator catcher, right? They do all these stuff, they make videos and they have all these documents and all that other stuff, right? But then when a predator catcher watches a Yuji Itadori cosplayer beating the ever-living shit out of a fucking predator, right? Because he didn't do no research, he didn't do no law investment or all that shit, right? They don't like it because that's not how their version of being a vigilante works. So they call him out as a son of a bitch. See, let's roll with that. You're fine with doing legal action and being professional about it. But when you see someone that actually gives a damn about saving a child's life, going out of their way to beat a predator's ass, oh, that's just a bridge too far. Oh, I don't like it. That's not how we do it as vigilantes. Because you don't care. You don't care. That Yuji Itadori cosplayer cared about the people of the country, not the country itself. And that's why we're here. If you can convince the lowest white man that he is a good president, you wouldn't notice him pickpocketing your wallet. You wouldn't notice him pickpocketing your entire tax dollars. Lyndon B. Johnson. This country would rather vote for a mediocre white man with a micro penis who rapes women, who is actively defending child molesters, who cares about more guns than rather of more people. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 33. Donald Trump violated that because he does not care about undocumented immigrants or people that come from different countries. Imagine standing before God. Mind you, as a vigilante, because, imagine standing before God and you say that you helped Eugene Carroll out of a situation with Donald Trump, that you helped Renee Good when she was alive. Imagine God pointing towards a Yuji Itadori cosplayer, and then he's gonna ask you, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you went out of your way to literally do what Mark chapter 9 verse 42 says? A Yuji Itadori cosplayer gives belt to ass, but then you're triggered by a Yuji Itadori cosplayer doing what you should have been doing because it's not how your version of being a vigilante works. This man went out of his way to get his hands dirty and beat his ass. But y'all don't like it because that's just a bridge too far. And that's an irrefutable fact. Y'all don't like it because it's a bridge too far. Y'all don't like it when someone actually gives a damn. And that's crazy. That's fucking wild. Like, imagine, hey, much power to you. You feel me? Much power to you, haters. Haters gonna hate, trolls gonna be trolling. But I would rather give a fuck about the people, not about the country itself. I give that Yuji Itadori cosplayer some respect because he did something that 80% of these people that call themselves predator catchers would never do. Because they don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to get arrested for doing what's right for the country and for the people. So, when are we going to wake up, America? When are we going to wake up? When are we going to do what a Yuji Itadori cosplayer did? When? You have either two options. Either actually give a damn and be like that Yuji Itadori cosplayer and give belt to ass, or you can sit behind your privilege, keep making expose videos, keep doing your research and your decoys and whatnot, and allow more victims to get hurt by the day. Because that's what you're doing as a quote unquote vigilante. Making expose videos, doing all these documents and all that stuff, but yet a Yuji Itadori cosplayer giving belt to ass to a fucking child predator and an anime convention is quote unquote a bridge too far. So you're fine with more children getting hurt because you want to do it the legal way. But y'all are literally proving David Chauvin's point. Y'all are literally proving David Chauvin's point. A white officer put his knee on George Floyd's neck, and 3 to 5 officers watched it happen instead of beating the ever-living shit out of David Chauvin. What happened to David Kaepernick after he took a knee? Oh, he was called out as a son of a bitch because he actually did his First Amendment right, which was to peacefully protest. Right? He got called out as a son of a bitch because David Kaepernick took a knee and peacefully protested. Wow. What a great Christian nation we are, right? No, it's not. And I hear people say that Donald Trump ran on the economy. No, he didn't. He ran on white supremacy. That's all this is. Gas prices going up, wars and rumors of war already happening, and yet you'd rather waste your time on someone's live stream instead of talking about actual history. See, I'd rather talk about politics because I give a damn. I give a damn. Paul Lance, a YouTuber that I watch, Paul for Equality, I watch him because he actually gives a damn. Like I do. He doesn't sit by and watch shit happen. He doesn't make expose videos. He calls it out. Ephesians 5:11 have nothing with the works of iniquity, but rather expose them. Paul Lance calls out the atrocities of Donald J. Trump. I call out the atrocities of the entire planet as a whole. And Schlepp calls out the atrocities of Roblox. But I don't see y'all calling out the atrocities of Discord. Like, I don't see you calling out the atrocities of Discord. Where were y'all when Alex Preddy was alive? Oh, you were just making expose videos. Okay, cool. Roll with that. Where were you when Alex Preddy got shot by ICE? Oh, I was making expose videos. Okay, cool. Roll with that, right? Because you don't want to get your hands dirty. You don't want to beat a child predator's ass. You don't want to go out there and actually prove that you care about the people. You just want to do it the slow and Dexter's Laboratory way. But yet you call out a Yuji Itadori cosplayer as a son of a bitch because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. That's all this is. Like, they are just upset because a Yuji Itadori cosplayer is literally doing the damnedest of beating a child predator's ass, and they are triggered by a Yuji Itadori cosplayer giving a fuck about the people rather than the country itself. That's the same with Christianity. See, Christianity, like, the reason why these people, like, they want to blame the radical left. They want to blame the libtards. They want to blame the fucking autistic people. The like, what can I use to blame other people for their shitty lives instead of my own? You're basically saying, what are you better off than you were 4 years ago to other people? That is the most selfish and white supremacist thing to say, by the way. Screw everybody else, right? But as long as it doesn't affect me, right? Where were you when Alex Preddy died? You didn't give a shit. So don't start saying that you care back. Don't start saying that you care now. You were never there. You were never there during the protest. You were never there during the No Kings protest. So why are you caring now? Why are you caring now? Oh, that's right. Because you didn't give a damn. But a Yuji Itadori cosplayer giving belt to ass, that's a bridge too far. Because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. Which is kind of sad, actually. But hey, much power to you, you know? You keep being a schadenfreude, which is a German word for you continue dehumanizing autistic people, gay people, brown people. You keep doing that because that just proves what you are in this country. Because you don't care. You don't care. See, I love my neighbors. I love Alex Preddy as if he was my neighbor. I love Renee Good as if she was my neighbor. I love Brianna Jackson as if she was my neighbor. But you don't, right? Because you don't want to get your hands dirty. You don't want to beat a child predator's ass. You just want to sit behind a camera and yappity yappy yap and all this other shit, right? Because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works, right? So you're fine with, you know, having decoys and all that other shit. You're fine watching the EDP 445 shit, having 24 conversations, 24-hour conversations, and talking about it instead of giving belt to ass. So you're fine with, talking to EDP 445, but then you get triggered by a yuji itadori cosplayer doing your job you fail to start. Because it's not how your version of being a vigilante works. And it's the same with this country. Part of this country was triggered by a black man in a White House, so they went back to what they knew, the plantation owner. 77 million people went to the voting booth, overlooked tax fraud, overlooked rape, overlooked bombings in Iran, and they said, yeah, that's my guy, because I rather watch democracy burn to the ground than rather build it up in heaven where moth and rust can't get to them. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here as a country. I hear people say, ooh, that Yuji Itadori cosplayer, he's a son of a bitch. Ooh, I'm glad he got arrested. Ooh, I'm glad this and that, this and that. You know why? Because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. Again, they were triggered because they don't want to get their hands dirty, so they called him out as a son of a bitch. Just like what happened with David Kaepernick. Oh, he's actually doing something that actually can save a child. Oh no, he's a son of a bitch. Arrest him. That's what happened. If you can convince the most mediocre white man that he is a good president, he will not notice he's pickpocketing your tax dollars and using it for his own personal gain. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He's literally using our tax dollars for his own UFC fight that's going to happen on June 14th. So, and it's kind of sad because before you had all that bravado, right? But when a Yuji Itadori cosplayer gives belt to ass to a predator, that's when you get mad. That's when you get triggered because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. So when you stand before God on Judgment Day, I want you to say to God that you actually gave a fuck about beating a child predator's ass. I want you to say it. Watch when God points you to the Yuji Itadori cosplayer that saved billions of children and actually gave a fuck about 14 million kids that go to school hungry. Watch him point to you, to the 14 million kids that go to school hungry. Okay, you made expose videos about a child predator. Okay, but what about these children's lives? What about you posting about Renee Good in my name? What about you posting Alex Preddy in my name? Where were you when you posted? Where were you when Alex Preddy was getting shot by ICE? Oh, you weren't there. Right. You could go with the goats. There is a special place for people like you that say that you give a damn, but yet a Yuji Itadori cosplayer is a bridge too far. A Yuji Itadori cosplayer giving belt to ass to a rapist is a bridge too far to these predator catchers who think that doing what a Yuji Itadori cosplayer did is wrong. I don't know what to tell you other than the fact that I give the Yuji Itadori cosplayer respect. I give respect to him because he actually gives a fuck. He actually cares about the people of Singapore. What does Europe have that we don't have? Oh, don't turn off the video because it might trigger you. Universal healthcare. Does America have that? No. Europe has that. What else does Europe have? Universal childcare. Oh, America doesn't have that. What happened in 1619? White people have been predominantly lynching black people on trees. Who didn't have the right to vote in 200 years? Black people. Black people. Because why? Because this country was founded by 21-year-old slave-owning white men who owned black people, who whipped them, who stole their native land. Mind you, this was never a great Christian nation, because if it was, 340 million Americans, including myself, would have been bowing at the cross where Jesus died in Mount Sinai because of our actions. But hey, you're okay with the EDP 445 video because that's how your version of being a vigilante works. You're okay with documents and decoys and all that other stuff. You're okay, but you're triggered by a Yuji Itadori cosplayer doing your job that's actually giving a fuck about actually saving a child. And that's why we're here. It's blame the brown people, blame the black people, blame the autistic people, blame the gay people, blame them for their own shitty lives. Schadenfreude, a literal meaning of someone who does like, wait, Schadenfreude, a meaning of someone who delights in hurting other people. So, when are we going to wake up, America? Probably never, because already democracy has fallen, because our taxpayers are being used to fucking go out of his way to, oh, I don't know, use our taxpayer money to hold up a UFC fight. Like, you don't give a fuck about the country or the people of the country. You're just mad because a Yuji Itadori cosplayer is literally doing your job that you're not willing to do. Because why? Oh, that's right. Where were you when Alex Preddy died? Where were you when Renee Good died? Where were you when Breonna Taylor, a black woman, died? Oh, right. You didn't want to be uncomfortable. You didn't want to talk about it on your page. You didn't want to talk about it in your posts because you didn't want to make your fan base look upset. Evil succeeds when good people do nothing. It is better for a predator, no, it is better for a predator poacher to go through an eye of a needle than it is for a predator catcher to go into the kingdom of heaven. And that right there, the Yuji Itadori cosplayer, what he did was actual respect. Because he gave a fuck about the people. Because he actually gives a fuck about getting his hands dirty. and giving belt to ass. But you don't like it because that's not how your version of being a vigilante works. So you call him out as a son of a bitch. So you call him out to be arrested. And that's why we're here. I don't know what to tell you. I simply don't know what to tell you, other than the fact that we are cooked as a nation because America has cared about more guns than about undocumented immigrants who came to this country. All right? That's why we're here. So it is what it is. 77 million people thought it was a good idea to have a white supremacist as president because they couldn't stomach thriving under a black woman. So they went back to what they knew, the plantation owner, because the outside of the White House did not look like the inside of the White House. So, with that being said, I hope you understand, and I hope you realize that a yuji itadori cosplayer giving belt to ass to a child predator, an actual hero of the internet, actually gives a fuck. But yet that triggers you because you don't want to get your hands dirty. Right? That's what this is. You don't want to get your hands dirty, so you rather sit behind in your privilege and get mad at somebody that actually gives a fuck about the people of the country. That's all this is. Like, that's all this is, bro. Did I mention you in my titles? No. Did I mention you in my videos? No. You're just there just to troll, just to dehumanize people because you would rather do that than rather actually give a fuck about your neighbors. Have the day you voted for.